I'm David Gadarian, and welcome to The Flip Story. We talk a lot about pivots and market creation on this show. But what happens when the thing you have to rebuild isn't a company or a brand, but your actual brain? Today, we're talking to Jenny White. In 2024, she woke up from a 3-day coma following a major brain surgery with her entire memory wiped. She didn't know her husband. She didn't remember the decade-long career at a high level as a high-level healthcare exec. We're here to talk about, we aren't here necessarily to talk about the medical miracle, although we're going to explore that too. What we're here to talk about a lot is the tactical, grueling, the beautifully intentional process of designing a human being from scratch. Jenny, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, David. Great to be here.
Oh, excited to kind of jump into everything with you. So, I guess just to kind of level set, and we'll kind of work a little bit sequentially if that's all right. But let's start with right now. What's today look like in your life?
Well, today things are pretty good, actually. I'm busy uh, signing off on my second book
Amazing.
and actually learning some new skills in terms of public speaking because I think I'd like to take my story to the stage as an inspirational talk and give people hope that, when things happen, there's ways around it and you have to focus on where you want to go. You can't always go back, particularly in my case. And so you have to be willing to explore, try new things, reach for the stars, really.
Well, I just love that. So that's pretty amazing. I want to come back on that just in a half a minute or maybe a little bit longer, but I have a really kind of weirdly specific question around what you just shared on the public speaking part of it. But let's kind of go through the story a little bit here. So if you don't mind, just to, because I am curious. So 2024, did you know at this moment that you had a brain tumor and you were going to be going in for surgery on this? Or was this like a kind of a moment of like suddenly one day you're healthy, the next day you like wake up and here we go?
Yeah. So how it all started was I was busy enjoying retirement. And one day back in, it was actually late 2023, it was December. So, you start getting ready for Christmas and all that kind of stuff. And one day I just wasn't feeling well. And the nurse brain inside of me sort of said, well, you better go get checked out because my symptoms were very similar to a stroke.
Hmm.
And so I got myself to hospital. And the good news was I wasn't having a stroke. The bad news was I did have a brain tumor that was going to kill me. So right then and there, we started the process of finding a neurosurgeon who would take me on because with with brain tumors, location is everything.
Okay.
So when your brain tumor is located in a really bad spot and it's wrapped around an artery that's closing off, you have a problem. And it would kill me sooner than later. So I did find a neurosurgeon who was willing to take me on, but the problem was they didn't have an operating room available because it was December. They were shutting things down so staff could have holidays with their families. And I
Right.
was basically on a cancellation list and had surgery early January of 2024. And that's when kind of things went wrong. Now, I knew going in because I had been a nurse for 33 years. I knew exactly what they were going to do to me. I knew exactly what the risk was, and quite frankly, I fully expected to pass away during the operation. And I had gone through and written my obituary and got my wills up to date and talked to my family over that Christmas holiday to let them know that this was bad. It could get worse. And, here's the things to put in place. So when the surgery happened, I immediately, I woke up after the coma and I was actually tied to the bed. And
Mm-hmm.
oddly, I knew I was a nurse. Like it was so ingrained in my being that the
Right.
first thing that I noticed was, oh my goodness, I'm tied to the bed, and the brain the nurse brain kind of said, "Oh, that's not good."
Right.
And then, yeah, then I realized as I looked down the bed, there was a man standing there, and he was in street clothes. And I remember looking at him thinking, I have no idea who that is. And then the next thing I realized was that I couldn't speak. I was making sound, but people were looking at me like, what are you trying to tell me? And so they explained to me that I wasn't making any sense, that I was making sound, but no words. So that's kind of how it all started.
That's
And then I
amazing.
had to, yeah,
So
then I had to slowly learn how to rewire my brain.
so in that moment when you're making sounds but not words, your brain is like are you aware that you're like trying to communicate, or are you just what's happening there? I think that's just so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I was lying there making sound, I thought I was clearly stating what I needed, like I'm hungry, I'm tired,
Right.
whatever it was that I was trying to say. And I knew from the expression on the people who were around the bedside when they realized I was awake was that I wasn't making any sense because they gave me these funny looks,
Right.
and then one of the nurses piped up and she said, "Okay, Jen, we can't understand you. You're a little confused right now. Don't worry. Give it time."
Okay. Jen, did you know you were Jen, or was this even like,
No,
wow,
no, that was news to me. So I
that's
didn't know my
unbelievable.
name.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, it was, you know, people asked me if I was really scared at that time, and I wasn't. I think I was just kind of numb and in shock that,
Right.
first of all, I'd just woken up from a coma, but secondly, I didn't feel fear. I just thought I was confused and okay,
Right.
maybe this is normal and maybe this will improve.
That's incredible. Okay. So you go from waking up, awakening, and
Yeah.
so walk through this, because I find I this is also kind of fascinating. So your mind is has clearly some big holes. The man who you were looking at in the street clothes, I think we can share, was your husband. It is your husband.
Yes. Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yes. And I didn't realize at the time, I mean, I was confused and
Right.
disoriented, but I
Hmm.
think it was like a javelin through his heart when he
Yeah.
realized that I had no idea who he was. And he said, you know, down the road, he said it was difficult for him to hear
I
that.
I could imagine. I could
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah, because I'm just teasing it out, but certainly hopeful, really happy that you're awake. And then in the same moment, like probably, yeah, of course, confused and hurt.
Yeah, well, he'd been at the bedside for 4 days,
Right.
and they weren't sure whether I was gonna wake up, and it was an unexpected coma, but because of the location of the tumor, they really did have to go right to the base of my brain stem, and by doing that, they had to manipulate my brain, and brains don't like being touched, they don't like being moved, so you can imagine the amount of swelling and the amount of bruising that was happening. And so that alone was causing problems.
Okay. So you alluded to the fact that you didn't really have fine or gross motor function at this point. Is it your brain wasn't working, or you had forgotten, or what's just kind of clinically what's happening at that
Well,
moment?
so I guess when I was coming out of the coma, I kept the myth alive that nurses make the worst patients. There you go. I was struggling to, remove all of the equipment that was attached to me. I was struggling to rip off the bandages on my head.
Right.
I was trying to remove my arterial lines and that kind of thing. And that's not something that one should do. Because I was disoriented, I didn't, they had tied me down to really protect myself from hurting
Yeah, of
myself.
course. Hmm.
So once I started to come around a little bit, they loosened the restraints so that I could try moving.
Okay.
Now, when they got me up to walk, because I should have been up walking immediately after surgery. And, this is 4 days later. So they needed to get me up and moving to
Yeah.
avoid blood clots and those kinds of things.
Right.
And what they did was they had a nurse on either side of me, and they propped me up onto the side of the bed, and I just kept falling over. My balance was out.
Right.
And so they put a walker in front of me, which I kind of grabbed onto and held onto, and then they literally manhandled me upright. And then as I tried to walk, I realized I couldn't get my feet to go where I wanted them to go. So that was a problem.
Are you walking now?
Yes, yes. So I had extensive physiotherapy and speech therapy, and
Uh-huh.
as you could tell, I'm fairly coherent now,
Yes.
and I can certainly walk and run and all of those things. So it took a while, but I got it back.
Well, that's pretty amazing. And that was that journey of kind of finding your physicality. Um, at this point, you're walking full memory recovery, or is this something that you had to continue to
No,
develop?
no, I still have major gaps in my memory. Now, as time goes on and as I continue to do things like write or learn a new skill, it does seem to be rewiring my brain, and some memories are coming back. But you'll be interested, my relationship with my husband is quite different. And that's because he's got 30 years of memories and I've got very, very few, if any. I don't remember our wedding. I don't remember our children and their childhoods. Um, we've basically started over. We're married and we live together in the same
Yeah.
house, and we're kind of like roommates as we navigate this new normal, which is I'm getting to know him like, I just started dating him. So we're treating it that way. We're treating it where we go on date nights. We treat it like, let's go on this adventure. Let's try this. And so some of the things that brought us together originally are not things I'm interested in anymore. So that's created a bit of a shift in, okay, act two, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this work?
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of what's happening.
That's incredible. I know when we were going back and forth pre-show, somewhere, somehow I got this word from you, and it's kind of getting into what we're talking about now. The word is visioning. And I just thought that was an
Hmm.
absolutely incredibly powerful word, especially coming from you with your journey. And okay,
Yeah.
so now we're talking about your relationship with your husband, but across the board, um, most people when they use that word, they're talking about a 5-year plan that's based on a massively deep trove of historical realities that they've encountered. And in your instance, you're kind of it sounds like a little bit of a fresh sheet of paper to some extent, to use the writing analogy. And so as you're
Yeah,
kind of going through this, developing this new relationship with your husband, new for you, I guess new for him too. What's the
it
process
is.
there? What's that? Why would you come up with that word visioning? I'm just like super curious about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I came up with that word, actually. That's kind of interesting. Just we came to realize that things are clearly different. And from my perspective, I guess really I just decided this is act two and I can't go back. So the only thing I can do is go forward. Whereas for my spouse, he is grieving the loss of his previous wife, basically. I'm a clean slate, and so he's starting over with me in terms of learning my quirks now and learning what I like and what I don't like, just as I'm starting to learn what I like and what I don't like. So,
Right.
for example, we used to do a lot of camping together, and now I kind of look at him when he suggests camping, and it's like, maybe not. You know,
New
and he's
Jenny's not
grieving
up
the
for it.
loss of that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so he's it's challenging, we've talked about going to therapy, but we thought we'd give it a go first on our own and just take it slow and just every day spend time together, connect, talk, share what we're feeling with each other, and just take one day at a time.
That's unbelievable. That's amazing. He sounds absolutely amazing, by the way. I'll just say that. Just I'm sure you know
Well,
that, but
he is rather amazing. I mean, gosh, most people would have, split by now, but he's hung in there and he's willing to give it a go. And I've given him the perfect out. I said to him, I said, if you want to bail, I get it. I get it because, we're strangers living together basically. And so we've made a commitment to each other to just keep trying for a bit. Yeah.
wow. Um, do you find so as you are you so on that kind of visioning journey, or maybe not, are you finding you're trying to relearn the person you were, or are you really the person you are
No,
now
you
and
know
that's
what?
fine? Yeah.
Yeah, I gave up trying to figure out who I was because when I hear something like, "Oh, I wish the old Jenny was back," I don't know who the old Jenny was. So there's no
Mm.
point in trying to focus on that. It's better to put energy towards where I'm going now. So maybe I should share with you sort of how I came to that realization.
I would love to hear
Maybe this
that.
is where the
Yeah.
vision came from.
Uh-huh.
So as I was recuperating, of course, I spent a fair bit of time in bed, even though I was getting up every day and doing my physio and walking and all that.
Yeah.
Um, but really, the exhaustion was quite overwhelming. And when I first got home, I was probably sleeping a good 20, 21 hours a day and being awake for very short periods of time, like maybe 20 minutes or whatever. And this is where, my spouse was an angel in that, he was by my side. When I had those periods where I was awake, he would make sure I got food, beverages, bathroom runs, all of those kinds of things. Um, as I was lying there, I remember thinking, you know, clearly I have a problem because my memories seem to be gone and I'm feeling extremely vulnerable now that I'm struggling to talk and walk.
Right.
And I gave myself permission to just go back to being a kid. So I'm lying in bed, my dog's beside me, the TV's on, but I can't really focus on it at this point in time. And so all I could do was kind of close my eyes or look at the ceiling and go, what would a 5-year-old be doing right now? And I thought to myself, well, a 5-year-old would be making up stories, making up games, creating characters in their head, doing that kind of thing.
Right.
And I thought, well, I got nothing better to do. I might as well do that. And that allowed me to start to think about children's books. And my
Right.
speech therapist, because he was coming to the house regularly, he finally said to me, he said, "Okay, let's try a different strategy here. We're not making much headway here. So try writing things down." So I just wrote simple words down like anger, frustration, hungry, tired, and
Right.
the words were correct. I was able to write. The words made sense. They were correct. They were what I thought I was writing, but I still couldn't say them. So that helped me rewire my brain to the point where sounds started coming along with the words. So it was just a very
Incredible.
long process that was a bit difficult.
Were you an active writer prior to this?
No, not at all. In fact, that didn't interest me at all. I
Yeah.
wrote academic papers as a professional, but
Yeah.
totally different than fiction, right?
Okay. That yeah, no, that is different, but still it's writing is both an art and a practice, and it's kind of
Oh, it
fascinating.
is.
So I know kind of leading into this, some of that writing was you mentioned it was a way to rewire and to retrain. And it sounds like you also got a lot of inspiration out of that, to the point now where you're a published author.
That's right. Yeah, so I started with kids' books, and as my stamina improved and I was able to do more and stay awake longer, I started playing on the computer. And one of the things that I did was I started exploring AI because I had time on my hands. And
Right.
so I just started playing with it. And as I created children's books, I created illustrations using AI because I knew what I wanted in the picture. I just couldn't draw it.
Right.
So, what I learned though through doing that was that building new skills was a great way to get my brain going again. I guess probably some of the anesthesia was finally wearing off, and some of the drugs that they had me on post brain surgery were debilitating because they were, to stop you having seizures and
Right.
keeping the inflammation down in your head and that kind of thing. So that was tough. But by learning new things and challenging myself to try something new and different, it really did help.
I love that. I have don't have the amnesia story that you do, but last year I actually did something somewhat similar in that I created a comic strip. I wrote the
Oh,
words
neat.
and I used AI to help me do the drawings, and
Right.
it was powerful. It was a neat experience on so many levels. Won't get
Yeah,
into it here, but
absolutely.
but hearing
Yeah.
you tell that, and have that discovery, it was, I had, certainly not the same backstory, but I had a lot of the same kind of path around kind of discovering
Well,
words and animation, and that's neat.
yeah, and as you said, it was empowering. Like, it made me feel like, "Okay, I'm not brain dead. I can do something. I can maybe make a contribution." And so when I started with the kids' books, I thought, "Well, maybe I can just play with this and give them away, and it will help kids learn to read." Because I
Right,
was basically back being a kid learning to read. So I kinda understood the journey a little bit.
right. Yeah, well, totally understood it. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's
Yeah,
actually absolutely awesome. I did want to circle back on a piece you had alluded to earlier. You actually shared that you had written your own obituary prior to your procedure. Out of
I did.
curiosity, did you go back and reread it since?
I did. I did.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I remembered this was pre-surgery. At the time that I wrote the obituary, I remembered in my nursing journey that a patient had once said to me that, it was a great exercise to do. And I remember asking, "Well, why would you say that?" And they said, "Well, think about it. You want to be remembered in a certain light. You want to be remembered about contributions that you made to the world. You want to be remembered as a good person, as a friend, whatever. So if that's what you want as the end game, then you're going to have to live that way to have that end game recognized." So when I wrote it, at first I thought, "Gee, I wonder if this is true." And then I'd
Oh
shown it
God.
to my husband, and he kinda laughed, and he said, "Oh, well, don't worry about surgery." He said, "You've clearly got a lot of work to do before you kick off according to this obituary." So, he was trying to lighten the mood, but,
Right.
I was a pretty practical person. I just wanted things to be in place, ready to go if things happened.
Mm, it's amazing. I wanted to also touch on something. You brought this up a couple times. You brought it up in terms of this word learning. I think it's really neat, and it seems like you're on this real active learning cycle. You're learning how to do public speaking, which, yes, you do have an amazing story. You were talking about learning how to walk, how to read, how to use your words again. You
Uh-huh.
alluded to you're constantly relearning new skills that are also seem to be
Yes.
firing up some synapses to older memories. This concept of learning, is this part of your recovery journey, or do you think you were always an excellent, astute learner and you kind of had this skill available to you, and okay, now you're reusing it differently?
It may be that I was wired that way. Both my
Hmm.
my parents were teachers, and so education was highly valued. But one of the things that I realized was because I couldn't remember things, I felt vulnerable and I felt inadequate. And so taking some courses and finding ways around my fatigue and my schedule of rehab, I was able to sort of self pace and learn. And every time I learned a little bit more, I felt empowered and I felt positive, which kind of kept spurring me on. So I
Right.
imagine that's kind of where it all came from.
Right. Okay. That seems to track pretty well in yeah, as just hearing you describe it. Um,
Yeah.
okay. So that's kind of seems to have led you from kids' books into now you're on your second novel in the adult genre.
Yeah.
Why don't you share a little bit about that? Because I think this is just kind of fascinating. You were not a fiction writer. You were not a person of fiction. You
No,
were not a child book writer of any kind.
not at all. Not at all. So after I played with the kids' books,
Yeah.
I decided I wanted to push myself further. And so I thought I've always enjoyed, for some reason I knew this, that I'd always enjoyed reading medical fiction like Robin Cook and that kind of thing.
Uh huh.
And as I was thinking about things, I thought, well, I've got over 30 years of experience as a nurse. Now, if I can remember some of those things that I did as a nurse, then I should try writing medical thriller fiction. Now, I didn't know how to write fiction. So again, I went back to the learning thing and I found courses that I could take that were self paced so that I could work around things. And I learned sort of at a high level, I learned the structure of fiction. I don't claim to be a perfect fiction writer by any means. I think when they were in there playing with my brain, they missed a stimulated something that, allowed the creativity to come through. But you'll be interested that once I started writing specific things about, and crafting the outline of the novel, memories started coming back. And
Mm,
that filled me with joy in terms of, I remember that. And I talk to my friends, I talk to family, I talk to colleagues that I worked with and say, "Can you validate that this happened? Is this a memory or is my active imagination, taking over here and
huh,
creating something new?" And they basically validated that what I was talking about was in fact things that I had either told them about in the past or that had happened when they were there. So that gave me a sense of accomplishment, maybe. It
right.
gave me a sense of empowerment and moving forward. So I just I created a protagonist who was a nurse, who worked in settings that I worked in, and I gave her a brain injury just like I had. And I gave her some of the challenges that I had, which were things like being exhausted all the time, stressed, not feeling well, headaches, and all of those kinds of things. And I put her back to work. And and it was kind of neat because it gave me a way to share my frustration and my anger through this character. So it was a
Right.
healing journey for me. Yeah.
Ah, I love it. What's the name of the book?
So my debut medical thriller is called The Triggering Scent,
Yep.
and it's available everywhere. Yeah.
Okay. Ah, amazing. All right. Um, as we're kind of getting towards the end here, I do have some more questions, but I
Yeah,
do
feel free.
want to pause for a minute and get into something specific on our show, The Flip Story. We have a segment on the show called the Flip Story Recipe Book, and we invite all our guests to share. It can be a learning, it can be a set of moves, tactics, actions, what have you. And the underlying kind of conceit on the recipe book is that the reader is going to be able to take a recipe, Jenny's recipe, and maybe use it to apply it to maybe try and flip their own life or even flip a moment and what have you. And so I'm super excited to invite you to contribute to our recipe book. You being now
Okay.
an established novelist and a person with just an unbelievable flip of her own. So Jenny, I'll be quiet for a minute and I'll
Yeah.
let you share.
Okay. Well, a couple of things come to mind right off the top of my head. The first is allow yourself to dream. As adults, we tend to live in the moment where we're surrounded by our circumstances and our situations, and we're so focused on getting through the day and paying the bills and doing what needs to be done that we have basically given up the opportunity to just be creative in your head. Think about what would you love and write down things, that come to mind, like would I love a bigger house? Would I enjoy driving a specific type of car? Would I love a different relationship? Would I love a different job? And just start playing with possibilities. What takes me next is that I want people to know that you actually have more power than you think you do in life. In other words, you're the CEO of your own life, which means that you are the captain of the ship and you can do whatever you want to do. Now, one thing that I came to realize, and I probably should have known this in life number one, was that circumstances and situations are temporary things, right? You might be in
Hmm.
a job that you don't particularly like, but it pays well and you want to keep the money coming in to pay the bills. Well, the reality is that if you think about what your dream job is, you can craft a path towards that dream while still doing what you need to do to get through the day. And eventually you'll find as you create that dream that you'll come up with small baby steps that you can do every day that takes you one step closer. When I was struggling with walking, my physiotherapist said to me, just remember, one baby step at a time could take you all the way up to the top of Mount Everest. And it was
Hmm.
like, whoa, yeah, you're right. You're right. So just keep trying, right? Never give up. Persevere. Have a solid will that you are going to get through the day and you are darn well going to learn how to walk and talk again and just keep going. Try not to get frustrated to the point where you just give up because for me, giving up wasn't an option. I mean, I might as well have just curled up in a ball and just, stayed in a bed and let nature take its course. But I think a part of me was so determined to just not go down that road. Just, and I dreamed about what I would love, and I'd love to be a best-selling author. So you guys have to buy my books now so that I can finish that dream. But I took those baby steps. I took the path that I needed to go down um, to try.
I love it. Absolutely love it. All right.
And that's where the speaking comes in, right? Like I want to give people hope and like I'm a pretty extreme example of having to recreate yourself, right?
Right.
So the
Most
point is if
certainly
I
are.
can do it, you can do it.
I love that. That's great. Thank you for that.
You're
All right.
welcome.
I got a final question for you. It
Yeah.
really kind of falls into the medical space. Um,
Yeah.
we've talked about this a fair amount. You had a long-standing career in the nursing field, 30 years. You're now remembering a good portion or portions of that life through your fictional writing. My question is
Yeah.
not about the fictional piece, and it's about really do you have what's your perspective on healthcare? Do you think you have a different perspective? Do you think that the person pre 2024 would appreciate what the person 2026 is feeling? The Jenny of today. I'm just kind of super curious about this because
Yeah.
this was such a powerful kind of this space really, mentioned this like amazing surgery. And you think about it, it's kind of mind boggling that we can
Yeah,
achieve such things. And I was just wanting to get your
that's true.
perspective on that.
Well, I was very blessed to have a very skilled team of people working on me. And, I have to be honest, the first neurosurgeon that I went to as a consult, he said, no, he wouldn't touch me because surgeons live and die by statistics, and they need to get people off the operating table alive in order for their record to look spotless.
Right.
And I didn't hold that against him. It was discouraging, but I knew it was bad. As soon as they showed me the tumor and told me what all about it, I knew I probably had a death sentence. So going to surgery was really the only option. The team that took it on, he was a fairly young neurosurgeon, but he was well respected in his field, and he had won numerous awards for groundbreaking techniques. And so he took a chance on me, and I took a chance on him, and it worked out. In terms of like the whole system, I mean, there are challenges in every healthcare system. I'm in Canada. I'm not sure where you are.
Boston.
Okay, so you're in a totally different system than I am. One of the blessings for me was that in our healthcare system here in Canada, we don't pay a dime for that kind of surgery. Now, from diagnosis to actual surgical date was about 3 weeks over Christmas. And I did call up a well-known hospital in Michigan and said, this is what I need. Can you give me a ballpark? And it was well over a $500,000. But here in Ontario, we have a healthcare system where nobody goes broke for not having insurance or not having, whatever you need to the capital, I guess, to put towards that. So in that way, I was very blessed. Um,
Mm.
and healthcare's got some serious issues in every country. We all have nursing shortages, which are driven by a couple of factors. One is a whole generation of nurses are choosing to bow out because they're exhausted, especially after COVID. And then we've also got a scenario where not enough nurses are being trained. So there aren't enough spots in universities and colleges to get them through the system. So, that's just one example. Some of the other challenges are budgets. Some of them, some other issues are things like infection control. So we've got these superbugs coming to the surface again. And with global warming, we've got more superbugs starting to emerge from the frozen ice, believe it or not.
Mm.
And we've got changes in technology in hospitals, right? Pretty soon, it won't be a surgeon leaning over you on an operating table. It will be a machine being operated somewhere else by a surgeon using automation. So there's lots of different things happening in healthcare that I think it's only going to get worse before it gets better, to be honest.
Huh. Well, thank you. That's certainly perspective.
It's not encouraging, is it?
Well, it's when I'm an optimist, so I heard worse then gets better. So I heard gets better. So that was my
Gets
takeaway.
better.
Whether
Yeah.
whether
Yep.
I'm that's maybe just me and how I need to hear everything. But no, I
Yeah.
was actually very curious, and I appreciate the candor in sharing that, because you have like these unique angles into entree into a question like that. Just
Yeah.
given your background, given your story, given what you're writing about and your recovery, and so it was really interesting. No, I thank you for that. Um,
You're welcome.
this has been awesome. I want to say just thank you for coming on the show. And how do people find you? What's the I know you may not have your speaker page ready yet, but I assume it's coming soon.
It's coming. Actually, I do have my speaker page ready. So my books for the adult fiction, the medical thrillers, are on www.jennywhite.ca because I'm from
Okay.
Canada.
Yep.
And then my speaker website, if people are looking for keynote speakers on these kinds of issues, www.speakerjennywhite.ca. So fairly straightforward.
All
Yeah.
right. I'll put both of those links in the show notes for sure. So,
Great. Thank
um,
you.
Jenny, I want to say just thank you. I want to say I wish you all the best and continued
Thank you.
recovery. And it is just a really inspirational and an amazing story of resiliency and so much more. And I love the learning mindset and the you sharing on some of the joy you've gotten as you've looked to rebuild around and the joy that learning has provided to you. I think for me, that's a massive takeaway. And yeah, I just wish you all the best.
Great. Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
Well, everyone, we're going to wrap
Okay.
it out here until the next time. All right. Bye now.